Some dogs bark at shadows. Others bark to save your life. The difference is how well you listen. The fire alarm never sounded. The gas detector never blinked. But at exactly 2:07 a.m., Ranger did what no man-made machine could do. He knew. The big German Shepherd stood rigid in the dim light of a sleepy Kansas apartment, his hackles raised, barking, not with fear, not with aggression, but with intention. His eyes were locked on the lower cabinet near the stove, where something had changed. He growled once, barked twice, and scratched the floor with both front paws. 4-year-old Lily Carter rubbed her sleepy eyes and tugged at her stuffed llama, whispering, "Mommy, Ranger's acting weird again." Her mom, Valerie, was already awake, instinct kicking in as a nurse and a mother. She'd seen Ranger like this once before, just before her father collapsed from a heart attack last Christmas. Ranger had warned them then, too. This time, the air smelled faintly metallic. The floor beneath the cabinet was warmer than it should be. But what really raised the alarms was Ranger, moving between Lily, her father Cole, and the cabinet like a guardian desperate to be understood. He wasn't just barking. He was pleading, "Welcome to the HeartForce channel, where you and I find more meaning in life through dog stories." Before we continue, please comment below and let us know where you're listening to this video. And if you have any dog stories of your own, feel free to share them with everyone. Valerie crouched down and pressed her ear to the wooden panel beneath the sink. Tick, tick, hiss. It was so faint she almost missed it. The old apartment complex, Midwest Crossing, had always made strange noises. The walls creaked like old knees, and the plumbing moaned like a haunted house. But this sound was different, dangerous. Cole Carter, a former firefighter with the Wichita Fire Department, was already on edge. He hadn't slept well in months, not since his injury forced an early retirement. His PTSD, a quiet storm beneath his weathered skin, churned whenever the unexpected struck. And tonight it did. Ranger, the dog they were once told was too broken to adopt, was now the one holding their fractured world together. 2 years earlier, Cole had found Ranger in the back of a no-kill shelter just outside of town. The staff had all but given up on the dog. Aggressive tendencies, the paperwork said. Untrusting, reactive, likely unfit for rehoming. But Cole had seen those same words in his own psych eval once. He sat by Ranger's kennel for 3 days, never speaking, just breathing near him. On the 4th day, Ranger walked up and laid down against the bars. They brought him home that week. At first, Ranger was a ghost, pacing the walls, flinching at ceiling fans, avoiding everyone but Cole. But then something happened no one expected. He met Lily. She didn't ask him to trust her. She just was with him, reading picture books, leaving pieces of hot dog near his bowl. She called him my protector before he ever wagged a tail. And slowly, Ranger became the dog he was meant to be. Back in the apartment, Cole's instincts as a first responder were kicking in. He crouched near the cabinet. Valerie opened the window. Grab Lily. Ranger barked sharply, one loud BOF, and scratched the cabinet again. Cole opened the lower panel and reeled back. The smell hit him like a hammer, gas, and the heat rising. Something was wrong with the main line. Within minutes, Valerie had called 911. Ranger circled the family as if counting heads. He nudged Lily's shoulder gently until she took his leash. When the fire crew arrived, they were stunned by what they found. A corroded line, a slow leak, one tiny spark from the faulty dryer in the unit next door, and the complex could have been reduced to rubble. But it wasn't, because of a dog, because of Ranger. That night, while the family sat shivering in their car under the glow of emergency lights, the fire captain looked at Cole and said, "You're lucky you've got him." Cole didn't answer. He looked into Ranger's deep amber eyes and whispered, "No, we're blessed." But the true story didn't end there. Because while one crisis was averted, another was only just beginning. You see, Midwest Crossing Apartments didn't allow dogs over 50 pounds. And despite saving 47 residents from disaster, Ranger, the dog once labeled unfit, had just become the center of a growing storm. Some would call him a hero. Others would call him a liability. And the battle for Ranger's place in the community was about to begin. Cole Carter never liked meetings. Not when he wore the fire uniform, and not now, sitting in the stuffy Midwest Crossing community room, flanked by angry neighbors, lukewarm coffee, and a stack of passive-aggressive flyers that read, "Safety first. Large dogs pose large risks." The words were bold, but the stare said more. Ranger wasn't there, of course. Valerie had taken him home after the fire inspection wrapped up. But even in his absence, he might as well have been barking at the center of the room. Half the residents had come to praise him. The other half wanted him gone. Cole sat tight-lipped, jaw clenched. PTSD made crowds hard. Conflict made them worse. At the front of the room, Marcia Halter, the HOA president and self-declared keeper of neighborhood peace, smiled tightly. "We want to start by acknowledging what Ranger did last night," she said, glancing down at her notes. "It was noble, very fortunate, but we also have rules. And this event brings up questions of policy enforcement." Cole's voice, low and steady, cut through the room. "You mean to tell me that dog saves everyone in this building, and now we're debating if he's too heavy?" A few murmurs of agreement rippled from the left side of the room, where the supporters had gathered, but the right side remained cold. Mrs. Bell, the woman from 2F, stood. "We're not saying he's a bad dog, but how do we know this won't happen again? We're all grateful. But grateful doesn't mean we change the rules for one person. What if he had attacked someone in the panic?" "He didn't," Valerie interrupted, her voice clear, calm, the kind she used with families in the hospital. "He stayed focused. He warned us before even a single alarm went off. He's not just a pet. He's trained." Mrs. Bell crossed her arms. "Is he certified?" "No," Valerie admitted. "But he's more in tune with my husband's medical episodes than any therapy dog we've worked with." That shifted the room. A few people glanced up. "My husband," she continued, "has service-related PTSD. It's not something we like to talk about. Ranger senses his flashbacks before they even start. He grounds him, guides him, keeps Lily safe when Cole can't. We didn't get a certificate. We got a miracle." Outside the meeting, in the small green patch behind the building, Lily sat cross-legged on the grass, petting Ranger's thick fur and humming to herself. She held a crayon drawing in her hand, Ranger with a red cape and the words "My Guardian" scribbled across the top. "Don't worry, Ranger," she whispered. "I won't let them take you." The dog lay still, ears twitching at every nearby sound, eyes fixed on the door where the grown-ups argued inside. Inside, tensions were rising. Tom Jasper, a new resident in 3D and an insurance adjuster by trade, cleared his throat. "Look, from a liability standpoint, I have to say, this is dangerous precedent. If one exception is made, every tenant with a Rottweiler or Pit Bull will claim emotional support status. Then let them," Mr. Burrows from One B muttered. "Let all the dogs be like Ranger and save us from dying in our sleep." "I second that," came a voice from the back. It was Mrs. Dean, the retired kindergarten teacher who'd lived in the complex for 25 years. "I was there during the storm last year, and I saw that dog pull a crying child back from the sidewalk when a power line snapped. Don't pretend this is just about rules. It's about fear." Valerie leaned forward. "What are you afraid of?" The question hung in the air longer than anyone expected. Marcia Halter looked down, then sighed. "It's not that we don't appreciate what Ranger did. It's what happens next time. What if he misreads a situation? Dogs aren't perfect." "No," Cole said, rising. "But people aren't either. And I trust Ranger more than most people." Later that night, back in the apartment, Cole sat in the kitchen with a beer in one hand and Ranger's head in his lap. "They want to put you on probation, buddy," he said quietly. 3 months. One complaint, one bark too loud, and you're gone." Ranger looked up at him, his big, amber eyes full of calm. Cole hadn't told Lily yet. She thought the neighbors were just grumpy. She didn't know what it meant if they lost Ranger. She didn't remember Cole before Ranger came into their lives. The man who woke up screaming. The man who once couldn't hold her without shaking. Now, Ranger stood between Cole and the darkness. The living reminder that some battle buddies had 4 legs. Valerie entered, dropping her hospital bag on the counter, exhausted but determined. "We can fight this," she said. But even she didn't sound sure. In the days that followed, the apartment community became a battlefield of whispers and alliances. Some residents knocked on the Carters' door to offer support. Others avoided eye contact in the halls. The mailboxes became bulletin boards of folded petitions and anonymous notes. Dogs don't belong in shared buildings. Why is one family's trauma our responsibility? Thank you, Ranger, for saving my grandma's apartment. 3 weeks into the probation, someone left a typed note taped to their door. What happens when a hero bites someone? Cole tore it down with shaking hands. He hadn't had a nightmare in almost a month. That night he did. He woke on the floor, drenched in sweat. Valerie sitting beside him, and Ranger resting across his chest, grounding him. The next morning, Cole made a decision. We're not running. We fight this. Valerie nodded. Then we're all in. And Ranger? Ranger just wagged his tail and waited for his next command. The first time Ranger refused to enter the elevator, Lily thought he was just being stubborn. But then he pulled hard, dragging her backward across the tile floor, ears flat, tail stiff. Ranger, she gasped. It's okay. But he didn't budge. He stood frozen, his nose tilted toward the ceiling vent, growling low in his throat. Later that day, the elevator failed completely, just as Mrs. Dean was riding it to her physical therapy appointment. The fire department pried the doors open after 20 minutes. No one was hurt, but Cole had seen that look in Ranger's eyes before. The dog had sensed something before it broke. Again, in the maintenance office downstairs, Frank Dunlap, new to the job, stressed, and unsure, flipped through the old repair logs left behind by the previous supervisor. Pages were torn, files incomplete. Half the reports were from 2 years ago. The name, R. Wills, appeared on several red stamp warnings. Gas leak beneath Unit 1B, temporary patch, monitor quarterly. Structural fatigue, noted in load-bearing beam near laundry vent stack. Elevator system overdue for emergency failover test. The old guy had flagged everything and been ignored. That night, Valerie sat beside Scout on the apartment floor, brushing out tufts of shedding fur as she reviewed her own notes from work. The hospital had just completed a certification for therapy animals. Ranger's behaviors, his intuitive alerts, his protective positioning during Lily's meltdowns, his uncanny detection of Cole's flashbacks, they all exceeded expectations. But without an official certification, Ranger was still seen as a risk. Across the room, Cole stood at the window, watching the night. I've seen soldiers with less instinct than this dog. He muttered. You think we could get him certified? Valerie asked. Cole hesitated. I think we shouldn't have to. 2 days later, a second note appeared. Typed. Precise. Left in the stairwell bulletin board. If management won't enforce policy, perhaps the insurance company will. Attached was a photo, blurry but unmistakable, of Lily walking Ranger without a leash. Valerie's heart dropped. She remembered the moment. It was just for a second. A quiet evening, no one around. Lily had asked if she could be big girl brave and hold Ranger's leash by herself. The leash was looped over his neck, but Valerie hadn't snapped the clasp. Don't be mad, Mommy, Lily said when she overheard the conversation. He always listens to me. Valerie pulled her daughter into her arms, the weight of it all crushing her chest. They were looking for a reason now. A crack. A mistake. But cracks were forming all over Midwest Crossing, and not just in the Carter household. Mr. Jenkins from 4A filed a complaint that his stovetop kept clicking even when off. Mrs. Anderson from 2B reported the fire alarm panel blinking at odd hours. And somewhere in the middle of it all, Ranger started sleeping near the kitchen door every night. Not just lounging, watching. He paced more, barked less. But when he barked, it was like he was trying to shout across some invisible line of misunderstanding. Cole began to notice a pattern. The places Ranger fixated on, corners of the apartment, vents in the laundry room, even a patch of wall behind the water heater. They aligned with the spots marked in the faded blueprints he found online. Something was wrong with the bones of the building. A week before the probation review meeting, Mrs. Dean collapsed in the hallway. It was Ranger who found her. Valerie had just come back from a double shift when she saw him whining at the front door, pawing at it back and forth. She opened it, confused, and he bolted down the hallway around the corner, where Mrs. Dean lay crumpled, whispering for help. He lay beside her, gently nuzzling her shoulder, tail thumping softly until help arrived. After the ambulance left, Marcia Halter came down to the Carters' door. "I heard what your dog did," she said, quieter than usual. "That's twice now." Valerie said nothing. Marcia looked away, embarrassed. "He's more helpful than some of the people on our emergency team." She turned to go, but hesitated. "You should know, there's talk of filing for lease termination. You'll be notified formally soon." "So he saves her life, and we still get kicked out?" Marcia didn't answer. That night, Cole and Valerie sat in silence while Lily dozed off with her head resting on Ranger's belly. The dog didn't move, even as thunder rolled across the Kansas sky. Cole pulled something from the drawer, a beat-up manila folder. "What's that?" Valerie asked. "The old blueprints. Some of the logs from the last maintenance guy. Look at these red marks. Gas lines, vents, fuse panel junctions. Every place Rangers barked at, it's all here." Valerie leaned in, scanning the pages. Her eyes widened. "This isn't about just Ranger anymore." "No," Cole said. "This building is a ticking bomb." 3 nights later, as a storm rolled in over the plains, the lights in the building flickered twice and then snapped off. In the dark, Ranger rose from his post at the door and growled low. Outside, something shifted behind the kitchen cabinet. He began to bark, louder than ever before. The danger wasn't coming. It was already here. The storm hit at 2:18 a.m. Rain slammed the windows like angry fists. Lightning snapped across the sky with a violence that made the building groan. Inside the Carter apartment, Ranger stood completely still, ears pinned forward, tail stiff, staring at the cabinet under the kitchen sink. Then he lunged. His claws scraped hard against the baseboards. Bark after bark exploded from his chest, not in panic, but with deadly urgency. Valerie bolted out of bed. Cole was already halfway to the living room, grabbing his flashlight, barefoot, and still half in his nightmares. Ranger turned, barking once toward the hallway, then back at the cabinet. Cole crouched. The floor was warm, too warm. He pushed open the cabinet door and felt it. The hiss of heated air, the faint metallic stench, that telltale whiff of leaking gas. Valerie ran to Lily's room. "Up! Get up now, baby! We have to go." "No, run fair," Lily cried, refusing to move until the dog followed. But Ranger didn't move. Not yet. Instead, he darted toward the back of the apartment, growling, his body pushing against the wall by the laundry room vent. "What is it, boy?" Cole muttered. Ranger barked once, then looked at him. It was a look of command. Frank Dunlap, the maintenance man, arrived 15 minutes later in the rain, wearing a hoodie and mismatched boots. He was groggy, half-drenched, flashlight in one hand, skepticism in the other. "Gas? Again?" "Just look," Valerie said. Ranger wouldn't leave it alone. He knew. Frank sighed, knelt, and ran a gas sniffer under the cabinet. It beeped instantly. His eyes widened. "It's real." Then he froze. He angled the sniffer to the sidewall, near the dryer. Another beep. Higher this time. "Oh no," Frank whispered. "It's not just here." By 4 a.m., the fire department had cleared 3 floors of the building. The gas was leaking from a cracked manifold that ran through half the east wing. 2 valves were completely corroded. Some residents were relocated. Others refused to leave. Ranger paced in circles outside the building, leash dragging behind him. He kept looking back, waiting, watching. The next day, the city inspector's report confirmed what Cole and Valerie feared: systemic neglect. Multiple flagged repair requests had been postponed for budget reasons. Safety valves bypassed. Old ductwork patched with duct tape instead of replaced. A building-wide disaster had been days, maybe hours, away. Cole brought the paperwork to the HOA meeting the next night. He didn't bring Ranger. "I don't care about the weight limit," Cole said, standing alone in front of a row of skeptical faces. "I don't care about the noise complaints, the breed restrictions, or the notes left on my door. That dog saved your lives. Again. And this time, we know for a fact, he knew before your alarms did. Before the text did." before even the city did. Some murmured, some avoided his eyes, but a few stared back with something that looked like guilt. "We don't need less Ranger," Cole said. "We need more of him." Mrs. Dean spoke next. She'd just been discharged from the hospital, walking with a cane. "If it weren't for that dog," she said, "I'd be lying alone in that hallway. Cold, confused, possibly gone." Her voice cracked. "I don't care if he weighs 150 pounds. I say we change the rules before we bury someone." Marcia Halter sat with her arms crossed. "And if he bites someone next time? Or mistakes a friend for a threat?" Valerie stood then, holding a folder. "These are letters from 10 residents. Statements from nurses, therapists, and veterans. And this," she said, pulling out a form, "is a therapy animal certification request in process." She handed it over. "Let's stop punishing the dog who's done more to protect this building than the management team ever has." But the building's board wasn't unanimous. An emergency notice was taped to the Carter's door the next morning, due to policy violations and liability concerns. "The board will be reviewing your lease agreement within 10 days. Cole stared at the paper. Then, quietly, he tore it down. "They want war," he muttered. "They got it." In the following days, Valerie went to work rallying the neighbors. Mr. Jensen from 1F sent over security footage of Ranger alerting before the elevator failed. The Parkers from 3B brought their teen son to say thanks. He'd walked their grandmother home late one night and kept her calm during a panic attack. The superintendent at Lily's school wrote a letter about the dog's calming effect on children with anxiety. She'd seen it herself. And Lily? She made a picture book. 20 hand-drawn pages of Ranger saving the building, comforting her dad, and standing between monsters and their door. She titled it, "Ranger Saves Everybody." And Ranger? He kept pacing the apartment, sniffing the same wall. Cole watched him, arms folded. "What are you trying to tell me now, huh?" That's when Ranger sat down, right in front of the breaker panel, and growled. Low, deep, unmoving. The next morning, Frank Dunlap opened the panel and gasped. A melted fuse box. Wires blackened from a slow-burning short. A faulty ground line 2 inches from a metal water pipe. It could have sparked any moment. "That's it," Frank whispered. "This whole place is a matchbook." He looked at Ranger. "How the hell did you know?" Ranger just blinked, tail tapping once against the floor. That night, Cole stayed up late, staring at the ceiling while Valerie and Lily slept. Ranger lay across the doorway, still and watchful. And for the first time in years, Cole didn't feel like a man on the edge of something falling apart. He felt like someone who had a partner. A soldier. A shield. He reached down, ran his hand across Ranger's shoulder, and whispered, "You saved us again." Ranger didn't move, but Cole swore he smiled. It was a warm morning when the inspector from the city returned. Not for gas this time, but for electrical. Frank Dunlap led him through the maze of blueprints and hand-scribbled notes. "This dog's been pointing out every bad spot for weeks," he said, still shaking his head. The inspector stared at the fuse box behind the kitchen wall. "I don't know how you're still standing." The report that followed landed like a bomb in the building office. Electrical fires, gas leaks, foundation rot, and a long trail of neglected maintenance requests, some dating back over 5 years. A name appeared over and over. Roger Wilkes, the previous supervisor, resigned suddenly with no explanation, but buried in the storage closet of apartment 1B. Frank found a plastic tub with "Do Not Discard" written in faded Sharpie. Inside, Roger's notebook, hand-drawn schematics, photos of damaged pipes, emails ignored, letters unanswered, and, stapled to the back, a one-line entry. "If I disappear, tell them the dog was right." The board met again, but this time, they didn't lead the meeting. The residents did. Mrs. Dean stood at the podium and said, "There's been a lot of talk about risk, but I'll tell you what risk looks like. It's ignoring a warning that comes in barks." The Martinez family brought forward their 2 boys, who spoke shyly into the mic. "Ranger walked us to school when Mom was sick," the younger one said. "He helped my brother when he had a panic attack." One by one, people shared stories. Ranger keeping toddlers from wandering into the road. Barking when carbon monoxide alarms failed. Nudging a confused neighbor home during a diabetic episode. Each voice became another nail in the coffin of the HOA's argument. Finally, Marcia Halter stood, looking tired, like a woman who'd seen too much in too little time. "We owe that dog our lives. I admit it. I was wrong." She turned to the Carter family. "We won't be pursuing eviction. In fact, we'd like to talk about officially naming him the building's first community safety companion." Ranger tilted his head like he understood. And maybe he did. A week later, the mayor of Wichita came to the courtyard, smiling for cameras beside Ranger in his brand-new blue vest, custom-stitched with white thread. "Ranger, community guardian." Lily clapped louder than anyone. Cole lifted her into his arms. Valerie stood beside them, tears in her eyes, watching as Ranger lay calmly beside his people, his pack. And in the center of the crowd, no longer a controversy, Ranger became a symbol. The upgrades to Midwest Crossing began soon after: new alarms, new piping, a full electrical overhaul. Funded in part by a grant secured by residents who used Ranger's story to rally support. Volunteers painted walls. Kids planted flowers. The place felt alive again. Even the building name changed. A plaque now sat outside the courtyard gate, in honor of those who protect us before we even know we're in danger. One night, months later, as fall rolled in over Kansas, Cole sat on the steps of the apartment with Ranger curled beside him. The PTSD hadn't vanished. But now, when the darkness came, Ranger was there, between it and his family. "I never thought a dog would teach me how to live again," Cole said quietly. Ranger looked up, then, gently, laid his head in Cole's lap. In the end, Ranger never barked for attention. He never fought for recognition. He just watched, and waited, and protected, because some heroes don't carry badges or guns. Some just have 4 legs, a tail, and a heart that never stops guarding the ones they love. Ranger's story is more than one of loyalty. It's a reminder of what love looks like in action. That sometimes the most important protectors in our lives don't speak. They bark, nudge, and never leave our side, even when the world turns against them. Ranger taught a fractured family how to heal, and a divided community how to come together. He reminded us that real strength is quiet, faithful, and fiercely gentle. We all face storms. Share in the comments. We'd love to hear how a dog changed your life. Let us know where you're listening from. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and join us here on the HeartForce channel for more powerful dog stories that inspire.